it makes sense that they're the biggest number of, I guess, similar companies at Prosper. It makes sense that PPC agencies are dominating now. But it's so funny that you mentioned that there was zero in 2017. What a crazy shift it has been since then.
Listen, in 2017, we did not have four match types for auto. We did not have category ads. We were missing like type after type after type of things that exist today. And just the entire concept of a PPC agency when I started in 2018 was almost like a novelty. And these days, ads are complex. You cannot run your account without an ad. And if you do them at the same time, you can't exist without them. If you do it wrong, you just burn money,
Right.
you know?
I got one better
I
for you.
just, tell me.
In 2017, I had not even graduated high school.
Damn, how old are you?
That
That
makes you
makes you what,
feel. It
24?
makes me feel young. I am 25. I'll be 26 in October. It's very
Holy
weird to think
moly.
about.
I literally have kids older than you.
Yeah. And
I
now I'm
have a kid
interviewing
who's
you on a
turning
podcast for the
I
second
have a
time.
kid who's turning 26 in August.
Oh
So
wow.
he is actually a couple of months
Yeah, he
older than
is.
you.
Yeah. Yeah,
That is pretty
I was
crazy.
still in high school. I hadn't even discovered the Amazon world yet. That would have been 2 years later. In 2019 is when I started my journey. So that's very funny that,
Oh,
again, it's
wow.
crazy how quickly the world changes, huh?
So
So,
it is interesting because I actually do business with some of my son's friends.
huh,
So they get a kick because like I used to drive them to the community center when they were like 11, and now I'm managing their Amazon accounts. And some of them do good amounts of business,
it's a
which
crazy
is
jump.
pretty interesting to me.
It's a crazy jump. Yeah, it's very interesting. I can definitely see that, where if my like friends' parents, on the reverse side, if my friends' parents came to me and said, um, "Oh, uh, we need you to manage our Amazon account. We know you work for an agency." I think that'd be very funny. I was like, "Oh, it's weird," because they, again, same thing. They used to drive me around, or they used to pick me up from something, or they would drop me off
Right.
at home,
They
or
literally they fed you after school,
right,
you know?
exactly,
And now
exactly,
all of a sudden you're doing work like actual real business work for them,
right.
which is off the charts.
It's very interesting. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of our Velocity Sellers podcast. I am your host, Velocity Pete, and today I am joined by Abe Shomali, otherwise known as the Beard in the Amazon community. I have Abe back on today. It's been a long day. If you can't tell by the way I'm not pronouncing my words correctly, but I have Abe back on today to talk about Amazon lying and Amazon changing some fees around and increasing fees and adding new fees. I'm excited to go into in. I'm excited to go into it with you, Abe, and really discuss what we're seeing, what Amazon is doing. We can call this sort of a emergency podcast because this is a very interesting development. So, Abe, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh yeah, listen, thank you for having me. Last time was a pleasure. Looking forward to what today brings. I gotta say though, I would probably start out by saying that lying is maybe a stretch, you know?
Maybe,
Um,
maybe.
Lying sort of sounds like something is happening with bad intentions. And Amazon is definitely increasing fees, and Amazon is definitely trying the things that they are doing cost sellers more, but not for everybody. Like with each of these fees, there are bands of sellers who actually come out spending less. So they're bringing things more into alignment with cost benefit analysis. So they're probably saying, hey, if I'm going to do something for you that gives you a lot, we want to make it a little bit more in the process. Now, that stinks when we had it very far in our benefit to start.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, so that's
It's definitely interesting. I remember, I want to say it was either the beginning of 2025 or the very end of 2024 when they said they weren't going to raise or increase any fees. And you're right. I'm sure this balances, and this maybe works out for some of maybe the medium or the smaller sellers, the way that they formatted these fees. And I'll read them off in just a second. But it just is very interesting the way that they have formatted this to it seems like an increase for a lot of people, if not just yeah, some at least. And so for me, that's very come on. Like you said, you weren't going to increase fees. Maybe not increasing it for everybody, but there is an increase for some people that might be paying more. But either way, we'll get into it and we'll talk more about how this affects strategy for the rest of the year, especially with Prime Day coming up after these fees launch. But I do want to read off the fees and what the updates are for them. So four different discounts or deals or types of I guess fee adjustments have been implemented and have been proposed. They will come out June 2nd is the supposed date right now. It's like I said, maybe subject to change, but right now we have a date at June 2nd. And so what's being changed is lightning deals, which used to cost $150 fixed, is now going to be $70 per day plus 1% of sales, and that is capped at $2,000. So the cap is nice, but they're gonna be taking a percentage of sales along with the $70 per day fixed fee. Best deals are similar. They used to cost $300 for a week, and now they're going to be same thing as lightning deals, $70 per day plus 1% of sales. I did not see anything about a cap when I was doing research for this. I did not see anything about a cap for best deals, so it could be just unlimited and as much as you make. That's very interesting as opposed to lightning deals that does have that cap. Coupons used to be 60 cents a unit, and now they're going to be $5 per unit plus, or sorry, $5 per coupon. Let me take that back. It's going to be $5 per coupon, not per unit. Unit redeemed, $5 per coupon plus 2.5% of sales. So maybe the $5 is nicer instead of the 60 cents redeemed in the long run. But the 2.5% of sales is definitely interesting. Again, nothing on about a cap on that one either. And then lastly, the Prime exclusive discounts are going to be doubling in price. They're going from $50 to $100 per day. So that alone is enough for me to say, okay, they lied and they did increase a fee because that's just a flat doubling. I don't see a way that would
No,
be beneficial
there's no
for.
framing that makes
Yeah,
that
there's no way to frame
not an
that better.
increase.
But those are the four that you are we're going to expect changes for. And again, of course, it's coming right before the big Prime Day event in July. Again, this is coming out on June 2nd as of right now. And like Abe said, maybe if your sales are pretty low and you're a new seller, you might actually save some money since some of these fees are actually most of them, except for the Prime exclusive discounts, are tied to performance. So it's not so much of just, okay, we have to eat this big fixed cost. Now it's only, okay, we can afford to do, 2 or 3 days of lightning deals plus 1% of sales if it helps boost us a little bit and it costs less than just doing $150 a day kind of thing. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about how this affects your performance and how this affects your overall strategy for the rest of the year and for the ongoing uh, Amazon journey, I guess, of you strategizing with these new types of discounts and fees. So, but yeah, Abe, again, thank you for coming on. Yeah, I want to, again, just get right into it. How do you think these fees are going to impact sellers on every level who are relying on PPC and how can we really align our strategies to better compensate or better counter maybe even these fees?
So it's interesting. There's definitely a few different things that will happen, as often is the case. The first thing that's going to happen is there are a bunch of sellers who do not understand anything about what things cost on Amazon as they run their business activities. Those sellers are going to end up simply paying more through inattention, and their accounts will be hurt. Some of those sellers have fabulous margins in which they can absorb any amount of inattention and they'll just make less. And some are actively not aware of how profitable or unprofitable they are, and these will have impact. That's probably at least half or more of sellers are not aware of what their fees are. For those people, this is not good for them. Now, for the rest of people who are aware, I think a few things will happen. First thing that's going to happen is sellers are going to be more selective about the things that they put deals onto.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost think that is a good thing. And I think that is maybe one of the results that Amazon wants out of this. So there is for me, there has always been a mystery about how almost any of these deals get traction and get redemptions. Because if you sort of look at any of Amazon's deal pages, realistically, they are a undifferentiated mass of listings just being thrown at you. You really can't find anything that's a good deal or anything that appears to be an exceptional deal. The only times you're finding deals are when you land on a product page already. And I feel like a lot of the time, the page and the rest of the listing and the product itself is what's making the sale, as opposed to the extra deal that's being tacked on. Now, yes, they show up on the search results as well as having a deal in place, but like I said, I struggle to understand how these deals get their traction. And I feel that by thinning out the number of people who will be willing to pay these higher fees for the deals with that are likely to move products, there will be fewer of these deals. The deals are genuinely a better offer for shoppers because there's not everything having a deal thrown at it. And Amazon is going to get more value out of their pages because things will be a real deal instead of just one out of 800 listings on a page. So having more selectivity, having more clarity about what is a good deal, that's a value right there. Um, yeah, the other thing that's going to happen, by the way, is really the lightning deals that have a cap at $2,000 will start out more expensive. But having that cap as $2,000, yes, it's more, but it is still limited. When you have products that move to 30,000 units during the course of a deal, that $2,000 fee, it is more, it is not breaking, you know? So it's not too bad, especially if you spread it over multiple days. So that's not as bad there. To me, the really painful one, really painful one is coupons. Um, Taking 2.5% out of every single unit that gets redeemed is a painful piece of the picture. It's just, it is lowering your margins, and that also hurts catalogs because one of the pieces of guidance we give to brands when you start working with them is coupons help products convert better. It is a simple reality. And we recommend throwing a small coupon at essentially your entire catalog if you can afford it. You know, if you can afford to give away that minimum, what is it? I think it's minimum 5% or minimum $1, like one or the other.
Yeah.
If you can afford that, put it on every single thing on your account, and your conversion rates will be better than before you implemented all of that. Well, now when all of a sudden that 5% discount is a 7.5% discount, or when you're throwing that on top of everything, it's impactful in a world where costs are getting tighter and tighter. I mean,
Kind of what we were talking about in our episode last week, where we spoke with our two directors of brand management, and we were talking about the strategies going into this Prime Day now with these updates. And a lot of it is going to be maybe you don't discount your whole catalog, like it was in the past. Maybe you don't slap a coupon on everything. It's going to be really interesting to see how sellers adapt to this, and sort of what new strategies and new things are born from this fee increase and discount updates. So I'll be very curious to see how not only Prime Day shapes out for Amazon, to see maybe if they have. I'd be curious to see if they sell more or less on a discount basis, like how many units go through the discount or how many units get lightning deals. I know sometimes they put those metrics out, and if the overall selling number is higher or lower for across the board on Amazon. So I think that's what everyone's
well,
wondering at this point. But
overall selling number always gets bigger.
it's
That
true,
seems to be one of, like it's almost like we've got death taxes and Amazon sales going up.
right?
And no matter, it's a spectacular machine. There's almost nobody who's got sales going up as steadily for decades as Amazon has,
It's true.
And we keep having these promotional days in which, at least from my end, I always think, oh, it's going to be softer than last year. And every single time they blow past the record of before. October deal days and Prime Day and every single one of these promotional days where we think it's going to be oh, there's less buzz around it, there's fatigue around it. Every time we think that it won't be noteworthy, my goodness, everything that's on sale blows
They
out.
do get us. They do get us there. I'm sure that again, I could be wrong. I would be shocked to see if it, or I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't go up that much as we're maybe there or people are expecting. Or if because of this, sellers are maybe they sell more because or they make more because maybe they increase their prices to combat this. I'd be curious to hear some other strategies you think will come about from this, or even more than that, like more PPC focus. Like, do you think we'll see higher or lower cost per click rates as people start to really try and compensate for these fees one way or another, whether it be through aggressive bidding or for just in general, just trying to make up for what they might be losing on these increased costs.
So I think people will definitely run fewer promotions. This is almost a guarantee. People will be more selective. When the price of a fee goes from X to double, whatever our starting point is, people immediately look at that and say, is it worth it? The most sophisticated sellers that I work with actively track the bumps of sales with those deals. And not only do they track the bumps of sales with those deals, they track the lift to sales afterwards. So when you move more units, your BSR improves, but it's not a forever lift. Obviously, things average out, and they track how long the benefit lasts after the running of the deal. And those historically have gotten to be shorter and shorter time periods of benefit. It used to be you would get a benefit for several weeks. Now it's down to days in some cases. And if the deal didn't hit at the right time, or it wasn't the right amount of a discount, or if you actually had a competitor running a deal at the same time, so your deal looked less unique or special, yeah, there will be minimal bump afterwards. There's also a separate issue, now that I think of it. Um, Whenever you run a deal, you have to calculate how many units you need to move to offset the lower pricing that you're selling things at.
Right.
And depending on the price of these deals and depending on the margin that these brands are starting with, the numbers of units they will have to move might be much, much, much larger. If you're selling a product with $5 profit and it goes to $3 profit, well, you sell 100 units, you make $500. Now, all of a sudden, to make the same $500, you have to sell 170
Right.
units. So if that deal is not moving 171 units, plus the price of the deal has to be factored in also, you actually have to more than double your sales because you have to offset the 100 or 270 or whatever your price value is there. So unless you're more than doubling your sales, you're not making up for that difference with these higher fees. So the threshold to make up for the deal just got significantly higher, plus margins are lower. So a lot of people who are able to do the math will say, oh, this might not be worth it anymore. So yes, much less deals for people who look at the number and say, oh, this is too much, and for sure less deals from people who do the math.
Right. And so that'll be very interesting to see because I know they sometimes will put out the metrics of, oh, Prime users saved X amount, on discounts, and I think that number might be a lot lower this year. Um,
Yeah.
and
But what
uh,
ends up, the flip side is when you thin out the number of people offering deals, whoever is left stands out much more. There are times where certain search result pages, 1/3 of the top products on the page will have deals running on them. When that top third of the page turns into one or two running a deal at any point in time, those products stick out. So they'll get much more of a lift. And there is one other thing. So the other factor is not just that you have to sell double the number of units. You might sell double the number of units just to make the same amount, but there is one side benefit of these deals, and the smart brands realize this. Putting your product in more shoppers' hands leads to more shoppers knowing your product. So that leads to brand equity. It leads to increased numbers of reviews. And when the bigger the numbers get, the bigger those bumps get. So you might not run a deal as a profitability play, but you might do it as a visibility play. And as a visibility play, the more competitors you remove from that deal environment, the better of a visibility play that deal becomes.
Right, exactly. I was gonna say that is that, you mentioned less people are gonna be on that page now. And so it almost makes sense for you still to be on there, because even if you take a little bit of a loss or you don't take as much of a gain, you're getting that, like you said, brand equity, you're getting that visibility, you're getting that traction. You might even get some extra keyword ranking, if more people are clicking on your listing at the time. So you're right, it could not be just a sales and see how much units we could move. It could be a, how do we increase our BSR? How do we increase our indexing on these holidays now, instead of how many units can we move? So yeah, it'd just be very, very interesting to see what brands are still continuing with their normal, promotional calendar, and just seeing and just going from, or not being affected by these changes too much. And of course, the big brands, I'm sure, will still have to do discounts because they want that visibility. But it'll be interesting to see how many smaller sellers would participate. But on that, we also mentioned that this would be better for smaller sellers because it's performance based, and so maybe you don't move a whole lot, but then you don't pay a whole lot either. So there's ups and downs.
That's a
Like you said, there's
that's a
ups and
big key
downs.
right there. Yeah. Also, smaller sellers are, in a weird way, they're impacted less by the coupon because the less expensive the product is. Now, I'm not talking about smaller sellers, but lower priced products typically have much higher margins. So $4 on a $15 product is a 28% margin, whereas you need to have a lot more actual dollars to match that margin with a more expensive product. So they could give that 2 points a little bit more easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting no matter what, it's gonna be interesting this time around, for to see, and especially when, Black Friday rolls around, and then we're really getting into the really heavy shopping holiday coupon discount season. I'll be very curious to see if they uh, roll out anything new before that, or if even they see how the effect is, and maybe they hear enough of feedback from sellers and they say, never mind, we're changing it back to the old way. Um, Probably not, but maybe.
No, I mean, I actually would have a question for you on
Yeah,
this. How thoughtful, with all the brands you work with, how thoughtful do you see them being in general with these deals? Because I can tell you from my end, probably 5 or 10% of the brands I work with are thoughtful the way I described, where they're doing all of those calculations.
right,
The other 90%, realistically, they are either interested in doing a deal or not interested in doing a deal. And that's really the end of it. Like, the calculation is often, all right, we'll communicate with the client that deal deadlines are coming up and we'll want to have a conversation with them. And they'll either say, oh, my product is not the kind of thing that people care about getting a deal on, so we're just not interested in it. Or, oh, we have a lot of units, let's run a deal. Or, no, I don't want to give up the expense. But they're not, it's almost like any one of those three is almost always just like a knee jerk reaction.
right.
There's no thoughtful conversation behind it. That 5% tends to be my biggest 5% of brands I work with. The thoughtfulness leads to your business being much
Right.
bigger. But I'm wondering if you see those same kind of reactions with whoever you work with.
Yeah, I would say, just based on, I speak pretty often with the brand management team here at Velocity. And just based on the discussions there of, like, what are we implementing? What are we doing? How's everything going? Um, we've got about 70, 75 people on our full management team, 75 partners. I would say of that, it's probably I think more than 5. I would say it's more like around like the 10, 15% range that are people that are really like, give me the information, give me the raw data, that are not just too quick to make a decision, that are thoughtful, like you said, they trust us, they trust our specialty, they trust our team to really develop a good plan, a good promotional plan, and incorporating this kind of thing, and all that kind of good stuff. I would say 10 to 15, final answer. Final answer. Somewhere in that
Right.
range, of our of
Yeah, I
our
mean,
of our full management
yeah, I wasn't
partners.
expecting you to. Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to take a toll or anything,
I
poll or anything.
like
But
to be
yeah,
thorough.
just hearing that the big majority of people are not. That's really the more interesting part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting where some people just blindly let us manage the account and that's it. And some people are very in the weeds with us, and some people are on the other ends. There's a whole spectrum of customer that we work with, which is very interesting. But no, it's gonna be uh, I think difficult to manage some of this, and like I said, come out of it strong on the first try. Maybe some people are just not as easily, like I said, they're not as thoughtful about this. They're not taking it as seriously, or they just don't somehow they live under a rock and they missed all these fees, and they're just wondering why their bottom line is smaller after this Prime Day this year, even if they sold more or something like that. That would be interesting. I wish I could be a fly on that wall. Um,
I could tell you that most brands, like I told you before, most brands are not aware of when fees
right.
change. They are not aware of what fees are. They aren't
Yeah.
aware of what promotions are. They rely on us as their marketing partner to tell them about all these
Right.
things. So they simply don't live in their Seller Central account. And this goes for accounts large and small. Small people are just overwhelmed with all the things to do in an account. And large people are so siloed that they're just compartmentalized without having to worry about every detail in the other direction. You know, one person is overwhelmed and one person just doesn't bother with everything. So often they're not aware at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will be just like I said, it's just going to be very interesting to see kind of where we land on this. I have another similar question that kind of related to like the bigger accounts that have more budget, that have more room to pay to play. Do you think a lot of what we're seeing here and a lot of these different discount updates, is this going to lead to a lot more off-channel organic traffic coming in and a lot more organic strategy being developed by sellers, have a bigger focus on that now that they have to, in quotes, pay more, maybe to get things like Google ads and social media to help reduce the reliance on Amazon PPC?
I don't think that I don't think that this news release is going to be the thing that breaks the straw of anybody's back. Um, there's nobody that says, "Oh, I was on the fence about TikTok, and 2.5%. Let's get that TikTok file out. Now it's time to look at it." I don't think anybody is thinking like that. Either you have the mindset of off Amazon traffic is vital and we have to be driving it. And this piece of news is all the more of a reinforcement. But you had your positioning either way, or just not. Like I don't think that tips the scale for anybody from what I can tell.
I'd be interested to see too how this affects Rufus and how AI plays into this. That's always a topical topic. Is how is AI going to maybe factor into these, and maybe any kind of bid changing software would play into your just your margins and everything else like that. Um,
So I'll tell you two things about that.
yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Rufus. Um, so I was on stage just last week. We discussed this before. And afterwards there's a Q&A, and one of the people at the Q&A said, "What do you think about Rufus?" And this was a couple of days after Amazon made an announcement that Rufus will start giving you customized product recommendations.
Hmm.
And my answer was that Rufus is a big fat nothing burger.
Really?
And why my opinion is this. I think that Rufus is just adding a name to what Amazon has always done. Amazon has access to enormous mountains of data. Okay. They know about who has bought product brands for years. They know about what the trailing attribution rate is for years. They can tell when somebody clicked on something on January 1st and when they bought it in August, even if your ad console only gives you 14 or 30 days. They know all of these things. I learned this probably 3 years ago at this point. I had a call with our brand manager at Amazon for one of the brands I work with. And they explained that for the brand this call was about, that the something like 45% of their sales come from a click that started between 50 and 180 days before. They knew that that click led to a sale later on. So Amazon has stores and has everything, and they have had an army of very experienced data scientists trying to pull insights out of everything. Okay. Facebook has had the technology to tell who is who in a picture for a decade or at this point. And Target, there's a famous story about Target in which they sent like prenatal coupons to like a teenage girl, and the father got upset, said, "What are you sending these things to my
Yeah.
daughter?" And it turned out that she was expecting, and neither of them knew, but Target could tell because when somebody that starts buying pickles that never bought pickles before, it said, "Oh, these people are having the cravings that go along with expecting something in 9 months." So data mining and deep data mining, this is not new. So the concept that Rufus is coming along and all of a sudden is implementing something magical. Amazon knew what your listing was, has known what your listing was on day one forever. Rufus is not telling it something all that new. It knows when a massage gun is a massage gun just from the picture, even if you don't add any words. And it knows what the words mean, and it knows what the context means. And you still have to put in a subcategory for your product. Amazon is not filling that in for you, you know? So Amazon already knows a ton. Rufus is not exponentially leveling up, unless I'm totally misunderstanding the technology, unless I am such a newbie in the world of technology that I just can't even comprehend what what Rufus is doing. That's entirely possible. It might be that I'm operating on like a low level of data understanding, and everybody else just understands what a different level of data interpretation it is. But I don't think so.
Interesting.
It doesn't, like the way that I'm describing it, it fits into my brain that they already knew plenty, and how much more is Rufus extracting. You know, when they say Amazon is going to give you more enhanced personalized recommendations, Amazon's recommendations are already really personalized. Okay. When somebody buys black t-shirts all the time, if they type t-shirt with no other qualifier, they're going to serve up a black v-neck t-shirt made out of cotton in size medium to you.
Right.
And they're not going to serve up a pink women's t-shirt to like a middle-aged guy, unless that's what he's interested in. But like his purchase history,
Right.
odds are, does not support that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been the case forever. You know, when your toddler is buying a size 5T shoe, and 6 months later they know to show a 6T shoe. They know it. They're not showing SKUs where 5T is out of stock or 6T is out of stock. They know. And this was all before Rufus.
Right. That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way. That they're just revealing this through Rufus, or that Rufus is the face of this information source gatherer that they've really always had. I knew they've always had the information on there. You know that it's something that our good buddy John Aspinall was showing us at ASGTG a few weeks ago. That, oh look, Amazon showed me that they're scraping the keywords from the images. I was like, I think they've always done that, right? Like I feel like they've always started doing that. And he's like, no, now they're being more transparent with it. Um, but it's very
They've had
interesting.
it.
Very
The
interesting.
number of data points that they have
Yeah.
that they don't even know what to do with yet.
Right.
Like someday, like in 4 months, there's going to be a person who comes up with an idea about the relationship between two data points, and he will have 16 years of those data points to pull relationships out of. He's not going to have it only the day he thought of the thing, you know. They know, they have hotspots. They know where people have their mouse linger. They know what part of the page gets clicks down to the pixel,
Right.
you know.
They know.
They nudge things down. They have, part of the things that they show in Amazon's ad console is the number of seconds videos have shown. You know, how many people went to 10 seconds, how many people went to 30 seconds, how long people watched the video in full. They have been tracking those things forever. They know when you stop scrolling. You know, a few years ago, somebody pointed out to me that Instagram, they actually watch your swipe patterns, and they know when your thumb goes in the other direction, what caused you to stop, like what broke your scrolling. They know which thing it is. So when you passively roll through your feed, they know where you stopped. Not only do they know where you stopped, they know where you stopped and went back. What caught your attention as you were scrolling and what made you go back? They know it. I'll go even further back than that. So through some weird chain of events, I happened to be home in the middle of the day, or I happened to be watching TV in the middle of the day when Casey Anthony was being sentenced. For those of you who remember, she's a bad person who committed terrible crimes, and she was in the middle of being sentenced. And part of what they discussed was her intention, whether it was an accident or whether she intended to do whatever she did. And what did they talk about? They were talking about her Google activities, and they said, did you or did you not type DRWO and then hit backspace twice and then correct the spelling of the word drowning? Like, they knew the backspace, they knew the click,
Whoa.
they knew the spaces, they know every single character even before you press enter. You don't have to press enter for them to have captured what you typed. And they have it times 1 trillion searches a day, times 365 days a year for decades. That was 15 years ago. So what are you going to tell me that Rufus leveled up today? What did, please tell me, what did Rufus,
I have no
with
idea
all
now.
of those things, between Target and Google search engine and Facebook face analysis, and where did Rufus level up, you know?
Yeah, I don't know anymore now. I didn't even
Now,
consider
now I
this.
want to, listen, I want to be dazzled. I want there to be a third,
Right.
I want there to be a third guest who tells me, no, you don't even realize this.
Right.
Please impress me. Please amaze me. I want it.
Leave a comment
But
down below
haven't
if you
haven't
think you
heard
can
it yet.
impress Abe with something about Rufus and what it does as opposed to what they've been doing to us for years.
There we go.
And especially,
Open
don't even get
challenge.
me started on the whole Alexa thing and how much I got one back there that knows everything about my entire life. So,
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
I have a client who's in the robot vacuum space. And he actually explained to me, why did they get into the robot vacuum space? This is like a large electronics company. Why did they get into the robot data space? Because apparently the big companies like iRobot and Shark and those large robot companies, they don't make their money from selling you robot vacuums. I mean, they make something from it. They make money because all of those things have cameras and map your houses, and they know exactly what's in your house. And in aggregate, they know what's in your house, and they sell that data. Now, I don't know that they are selling individual pictures of your or mine house, but they can tell that 77% of houses have white walls and 14% of houses have stairs on the first floor and 16% of houses are ranches, and we're falling off of these number of stairs, and they know all that stuff. And it's all
Ooh.
mapped and it's all repackaged and sold. And he said, yes, we want data that we can sell also. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, and
Whoa.
he just explained that to me as they got into it.
I mean, data is the new what my dad's a marketer, and he said something because he has been a marketer forever, and he said something about data being the new, I forget what it was now.
Data is both the new and the old of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
They keep getting better at it. They keep getting better at having more data to work with. They're still not exactly sure. I mean,
Right.
we make our living by interpreting data. If the interpretations were clear, we would just have nothing to do. It would be just like, well, A and B happened, so the action is C. It just is always C, and there's nothing to discuss. Well, that is not the case. If that was the case, there would be a $29 software, or it would be just built into Amazon, and like there's nothing for any of us to do. But that's not the case. Not at all. Not at all with any part of this system is A plus B simply equals C. No way. Everything has options. Everything has opportunity. Everything has various interpretations. Everything has an option to think outside the box. That box is not closed. Oh, I think I got myself like overwound up.
You've given me a lot to think about over those next couple of years. Not even just days or weeks.
At least until the next next podcast.
Until our next episode, that's for sure. Yeah, no, this
Yes.
has been fascinating. I want to end on a high note. So Abe, any final thoughts on everything we talked about today, between the new discount updates, between the new not the new, I guess, between just the truth about Rufus. Any final thoughts for us out there, for me and all the sellers that watch? Any final tips and tricks for how to navigate these new discounts and these new prices?
Um, yes. Get that calculator out and be aware of those impacts. Now, the truth is that you should still be profitable even with these new numbers that you have to plug in. You just need to run the numbers and don't be the business that just makes a snap decision based on your emotion. I guarantee that people will still have their best days ever on deal days, and people will move mountains of merchandise, and they will move those mountains of merchandise profitably. So you just need to get that calculator, figure out how many units of product you need to move to maintain your margin, how many units you have to move to get that BSR lift, and get the pricing that makes that happen with the deal prices factored in. It's not that tough. It's what we do for brands. I'm sure it's what you do for brands also. And it is still very possible to be successful. As much as I give all of the challenges,
Yeah.
listen, we work with a lot of winners. And there are absolutely plenty of winners on Amazon every day and week and month. You just have to be one of those.
Amen. Amen. And like Abe mentioned, both of us work for amazing companies that can help you out in any way. So I will make sure we have both of our YouTube and our website is always linked, but I will also have Abe's LinkedIn profile and Express Strategies blanking website. I couldn't think of the word website.
There we go.
Homepage linked down in the bio below. So make sure to check out either one of them for a helpful and optimized strategy for tackling these fees. Abe, as always, it's a pleasure. You blow my mind every single time. Thank you so much for joining us today for an episode. You've given me a lot to think about. I'm sure our viewers feel the same as well. So again, thank you so much for being a guest again.
Dude, thanks for having me. It is always fun to talk.
Yeah, amen to that. Thank you everybody for watching. I am Velocity Pete, and we will see you next week.